Hola, it's me, Trashcan.
Alright, what's up guys? Welcome back to a tier list video. It has been so long since I did one of these, I think over 6 months. So, I do have COVID. If I sound a little strange, that's why. I did want to make videos after Worlds, but because of COVID, I haven't been able to make as many videos as I want. However, there is a patch tomorrow, so I figured I should do this video, better late than never, on the Worlds meta patch before the new patch hits. And I'll try to make a video on the new patch since I'm planning to make more videos now. But the Worlds World Championships this year, if you didn't see it, NA didn't make it out of groups. I might make a video about that. I made a video like what happened to Europe last year, and I might make a video of what happened in North America this year. But Japan finally won a world championship, well deserved. They absolutely dominated 3-0. Every single world championship grand finals has been 3-0, which I think is pretty funny. But huge congrats to them. They are definitely the best players in the game right now. So let's go over what the best Pokemon at Worlds that I think were. This is from watching all the games. This is my personal opinion. I'm not world champion like I was the last 2 years, so you know, like if the world champion team, like PYI, Ton, GG made a tier list, it'd probably be a little more accurate than mine this year. But I still think I have a decent grasp on the meta. So first off, we have Blaziken as number 1. Blaziken looked really impressive. They had this weird bot lane they played, which was like Blaziken and Mute EXP share. And according to some of the Asia players I've talked to, it's like the best bot lane. They say unbeatable, you can't beat it. And that's taking over in pro play. If you don't know, the usual bot lane is a defender EXP share with an attacker. They did a lot of weird macro stuff like that, which is good. Innovation is good, and it won them the Worlds, so they definitely deserve it. But Blaziken, I'd say Blaziken's biggest weaknesses are kind of snipers, like long range control mages and snipers, because they can't really get on top of them. But I think it's just so strong against everything else that it doesn't matter. And that being its only weakness is really good for a Pokemon. Like, it's really good in the speedsters. It farms all the other all-rounders besides maybe Gyarados. I think that's more of an even matchup. And it farms defenders too, because it has 2 unstoppables, which not a lot of Pokemon can boast having 2 unstoppables all the time, since it doesn't require Knee and Unite. So Blaziken is extremely strong. Charizard is also very strong. I'd say once it gets level 9, it has the strongest ult in the game by far. It's not even close. The fact you can cancel any ult, you can cancel Slowbro, you can even cancel Gyarados ult, which is supposed to give you invincibility, is extremely broken. And I would say it was a little overrated at Worlds for what it is. Even though I have it as second on this tier list, it definitely has a lot of weaknesses that can be exploited. It's a really not strong early game. Pokemon like Blaziken that can just fight all the time and don't need to hit their ult. Like, for example, Charizard ults needs to farm its ult and get it back. It's really weak during that period of time. Maybe not really weak, but it's much weaker. Definitely not a god tier Pokemon when it doesn't have ult. So Pokemon like Blaziken do really out-tempo it, because Blaziken just can go for fights all the time without needing ult, and that's where Charizard struggles, is early game and when it doesn't have its ult. So I think a lot of teams took advantage of Charizard's weakness as well, but I still think it's really strong. And there were actually a lot of Charizards that didn't seem to know how to utilize the ult the best at Worlds. Since it's generally considered an easy Pokemon by pro players, it isn't actually practiced that much. So I think a lot of Charizards with their ults. Ceruledge, this is another Pokemon that has probably like the second best ult in the game. It's a little different though, because you have to use your ult flash, and that's undodgeable basically if you're a really good player, because you can double the range, not double, but like extend the range with flash, and that's really good. But the fact you only have that every 90 seconds does really hinder it, And that's, again, where I think Blaziken reigns over these 3 Pokemon. I'd say these Pokemon are like the holy trinity of broken all-rounders at Worlds by far. None of the other Pokemon really come that close to them. But that's why I think Surge and Charizard are a little worse than Blaziken. I think Blaziken really shined at Worlds. And I was a Blaziken hater before Worlds. But watching the Worlds games really changed my mind on the Pokemon. So I was a big Blaziken hater. I thought Charizard and Surge were better out of the 3. But Worlds changed my mind on how broken it is. Now, Slowbro, definitely the best tank. Again, like, the world champion team was playing Slowbro without EXP share. I think they were playing triple glasses stacking Slowbro. But yeah, Slowbro's still very strong. He's been strong in the meta for a while. I don't think I have to explain that much. People know what it does. Umbreon, also very strong. I think what makes Umbreon strong is that you can flex it to support. So you saw a lot of teams pick it as like a defender at first. And then it's really strong as a support into melee Pokemon. So even the all-rounders here. So they play like Mamoswine, which is the best defender to melee Pokemon. We'll get into Mamoswine because that's a huge jump up from previous tier lists. And I'll explain that later. But the fact you can flex it, I think, is what makes it so far up here. Because as just a pure defender, it might be below Tree, honestly. But the power of the flex, I think, really helps it. So I think Wish too, basically being like even as a defender, you can play Wish, and that's just really strong for your team. I think healing is still very broken in Unite, even with the anti-heal items. Leafeon, very strong early game character. It was the same at Worlds last year. It's had a couple nerfs, but I still think it's very strong. You saw it banned a lot. It definitely has a lot of weaknesses. Late game, it's really shit. So a lot of teams that cannot snowball, that don't have like really good 5 players that play macro perfectly, don't make mistakes, do not want to play Leafeon, because if you're the same level as the enemy team, late game, like you're just even in the game, you're gonna lose. The whole point of Leafeon is it's the strongest early game character. Not even close. The only other character close to Leafeon in early game is Hoopa. But that's not as a carry. As a carry, Leafeon is by far the best early game character. It's not even close. So that's its biggest strength, but its biggest weakness is, again, it's not going to be able to carry the late game. Now, Gyarados was, I think, the dark horse of Worlds. There were a lot of teams that could not play Gyarados, my team included. I was on Team G, and no one on my team could play Gyarados. It just didn't suit the players on my team. OG was my top laner, and it's a shame because Gyarados showed how strong it is. I actually think there are no counters to Gyarados. The only like slight counter to Gyarados would be Leafeon steamrolling at early game to the point there's such a lead that Gyarados can't come back in the game. But I think that's rare. It's actually pretty hard to punish the Magikarp in early game with the balance right now, and that's what makes it so strong. The fact you can't punish it early game, most games, even if it loses early game, it's hitting Gyarados at like 830. And that is so strong. And once it hits Gyarados, specifically for the bounce Dragon Breath moveset, I don't think there's any counters to it. It beats all-rounders, it beats speedsters, like it destroys all-rounders, let me clarify. It destroys speedsters, it even destroys tanks and supports. It destroys attackers as well. It's one of the biggest counters to stationary attackers like Delphox, Espeon, Candle, even Mew, Pikachu. It destroys them. And the only thing it's not like extremely good into is snipers, so like Intel Snipe Shot. So I think Dragonite is also decent into it, but for a different reason, not really like when it's fighting it. But that's why Gyarados is so strong. There's literally no counters. There's Pokemon that are okay into it, like they don't get countered by it, but it counters like 90% of things in the game right now, in my opinion. I think it's so strong. That might be a little bit of controversial opinion, but I think Gyarados really showed how strong it was at Worlds. Most of the top 8 teams played Gyarados, and all the teams that didn't play Gyarados at all didn't make it out of groups really. So now at the top of S tier is Hoopa. So I think all the supports between these 3 these three supports, Hoopa, Blissey, and LD, are very strong. And you see they're all in the same tier. So there's some games with your comp that you might want Blissey over Hoopa. But in general, like the mix and match between them, where like some games you might want LD, some games you want Blissey. The thing with Hoopa is you usually want it a majority of the games compared to Blissey and all. You're like, Blissey does look slightly better with their comp here, but Hoopa's just broken, so we should go Hoopa. And again, it's the same concept as Leafeon, where it's really strong early game. But the thing is, it's really strong in the mid and late game with your macro for points. The only weakness of Hoopa, I'd say, is that it's weaker in team fights. So if you're not able to get a lead throughout the game with Hoopa, then you're probably going to lose the late game team fight. So that's the biggest issue with it. But even at Ray, you can use it to get a point lead, but usually that'll lead to a fight. So if you don't have a big lead by then, you're kind of screwed. But still, Hoopa is very strong in pro play with 5 players that really know what they're doing across the game. Now, Mamoswine has a huge jump here. If you watch my videos a lot, in the previous tier list, he's like all the way down in like C tier, D tier. And he did get some buffs. And I will say the buffs did really help him. But I'd say the biggest thing for Mamoswine compared to like Trevenant is he CCs for longer. So if you don't know what CC is, that's crowd control. He stuns for way longer than Trevenant. On land, it's actually 0 pain, which you can't really experience anywhere in the game besides Training Cave. And Tree combo on 0 pain actually does not perma-stun people. So they'll be able to, like in the middle of your Wood Hammer combos, and when you're trying to Horn Leech them, they'll be able to like eject away or something. Which when you're playing against people online, they can't do that. But on 0 pain, it's very easy to get out of Tree combos. So I think Tree's actually like pretty shit as a defender. I'll explain why he's so far up, even while I'm saying that when I get to him. But the thing with Mamo is he stuns for longer than Tree, and it's like a perma CC, right? You pick someone up in Ice Vein, they're stunned for like 2 seconds. There's nothing they can do to get out of it compared to Tree on 0 pain. Not only that, he is way tankier than Trevenant. So a lot of Trevenant's bulk comes from healing. So he has like a passive that self-heals. His ult shield, if you didn't know, while he's ulting, doubles his healing. So like that really pairs well with his passive and like focus fan. But the thing with that, since like the years before, is anti-heal has become much more common to play on like multiple Pokemon. A lot of teams are playing anti-heal on like 2 or 3 Pokemon now on their team. So Tree loses a lot of the bulkiness he had before. Before, when I played Tree Defender, I'd be 10% HP, I'd ult. Now I'm full HP from the combo I just explained to you guys. But now I can't do that anymore. And his defenses and health, just base defense and health compared to other defenders, is not that great. So Mamoswine has the highest defenses, and like I think it's like top 3 in health, base health, out of all the defenders. And I think he has the highest defenses. So he's extremely tanky, and that makes him the most well-equipped tank to deal with these broken all-rounders that are at the top of the meta right now. So it is meta dependent because he does not have much movement with his moves. So like against control mages, I think he really struggles. Although if you pair Earthquake with Splash, it's a really good combo that's almost undodgeable if you do it right. But it is a little predictable, so I think he does struggle into control mages a lot, but that's not the meta right now. The meta is a lot of melees. If you look at the whole God tier, it's all melees, so it's not a single range Pokemon. So that's why Mamoswine is so high up. Again, the top, I've explained this in previous tier lists, but for those who are new to my channel, the top of the meta Pokemon are gonna determine the rest of the meta. So like, if these were not the top meta Pokemon, Mamoswine could fall to B tier. But I do think he's so strong right now from buffs that he's no longer like C or D tier like in the past. Now Mimikyu is an interesting case because I think Mimikyu against the best of the best teams, like if you play Mimikyu against the #1 world champion team this year and you're facing like PY and Ton, it's not going to do anything. Mimikyu's actually really shit into a really coordinated team. It doesn't do much, but it's just really strong. Like, it has a kit where like it's really strong, but it's not meant for pro play. I talk about this a lot, where like some certain Pokemon with certain kits are not meant for pro play. Gengar is a really good example, where it's actually really good in solo queue. I'm a fan of Gengar in solo queue, but it's just not well equipped against a coordinated 5-stack team, and Mimikyu's the same. However, Mimikyu's getting huge buffs tomorrow that will actually make it really good. But I'm talking about the Shadow Sneak moveset right now. But again, it's so strong that I think a lot of teams at Worlds this year even weren't that coordinated. Like, Mimikyu could still punish them, and that's why it's this high up. Now, Trevenant, so let me explain this. I'm actually a big hater of Woodhammer on Trevenant. I think it's so shit. It does not work on LAN. It does work online, since it's not zero pain and you can perma-stun people. But on LAN, I'm a big hater of Woodhammer. But Curse Trevenant is really strong. Now, I don't think you can play Curse Trevenant with EXP share. You just don't have enough damage. Like, it doesn't work. I've tried multiple different builds with EXP share, and you're just not taking enough. You don't do enough damage. You really need that third item without EXP share. Now, again, like, the world champion team, TY and Ton GG's team, they were playing Mute EXP share instead. So instead of an attacker carry, they have Mute EXP share, Tree no EXP share. So like, it was basically their defender with no EXP share, and I think that's really strong. My team actually had a similar idea where we did Hoopa LD, and like LD was our attacker, and we'd play Tree no EXP share. And we didn't play it at Worlds for whatever reason. We didn't practice it enough. But we were close to the idea that the world champion team had, and I think it's really, really strong, because Curse Tree destroys a lot of the meta. It's actually one of the things that don't get countered by Gyarados, and is pretty decent into it. It farms all the all-rounders. It farms Leafeon, it farms Blue Urshifu. The only thing it struggles into is maybe the mages, but it's not that bad. So it's one of those things where there's not really any like counters right now. I'd say Hyper Voice Sylveon was like a big counter to it, but Hyper Voice wasn't that strong at Worlds, so there really weren't many counters to it, and that's why I think it was so strong. Now Mew is up here because of EXP share. I want to clarify that. Mew without EXP share would probably be B tier for me, like A or B tier. It is in S tier with EXP share, and I know that's crazy to hear, and no one, like, it's not like I thought of this before Worlds. I'm like, wow, Mew EXP share is really good. I watched the world champion team play Mew with EXP share. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. That's really good, and obviously they won Worlds with it, so I think it's really strong with the EXP share. Mew's been around for a while, so I don't think I need to explain much more. But yeah, Blue Urshifu finally got returned to the state it was at Worlds last year. And at Worlds last year, I had it all the way up here. And I think it's the exact same as it was last year. So you can see the power creep since then. Sorry, COVID. You can see the power creep since last year. It's crazy. I still have it pretty high up, but it's no longer the threat that it was last year. It's just a very good, solid Pokemon. Not the best of the best, but not the worst either. Blissey has been top of the meta for years. It's disgusting. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. I know I'm known as the Blissey main, but it's just disgusting how it's been S+ tier for 3 years. Like, this has been the most variety meta we've had, and still Blissey's at the top. I just hope at Worlds next year Blissey will no longer be like this dominant. Like, but I guess they haven't released many supports, so it does make sense. I guess Hoopa's the same, but I mean, this pink blob is just disgusting how long it's been broken. Now Pikachu got like buffs, and they did make it really good, but I think it was already higher up there because of one thing, which is that it's really good into certain Pokemon. Like, it's really good into Blue Urshi, Leafeon. A ranged like Mage is pretty decent into all-rounders. It's going to be better than others, especially because it's really good early game. and early game was very important in this world. So the top teams were able to snowball their early game leads, which is why you see a lot of early game Pokemon here. Now, LD, I don't think I need an explanation. It's gotten so many nerfs, and it's still really good. I think it's the most nerfed Pokemon. I'm pretty sure it's the number one most nerfed Pokemon, and it's still really good. So, no explanation needed there. Now, Dragonite is a big jump up from my previous tier list, and I think it did get a couple buffs, but nothing like too notable. They're very small buffs. I think the biggest thing with Dragonite is it has such good tempo in the hands of a right player. I think Dragonite's actually a very skill-expressive Pokemon. So there's not many good D-Knights in the world. But the ones that do play it make it look broken. I think it's very underrated right now and very, very good. Red Urshi. I'm a very big Red Urshi hater. I've always thought it was pretty bad. But I have to admit that it looked really good at Worlds this year. If you asked me before Worlds, I would have been like, it's dog shit. It's in like C tier. But I think I was wrong about that. And its performance at Worlds showed that it's A tier. I think there's a team that played it like every game and they got like 5th place. I think it was, my team had the hardest group out of all the NA teams. We faced 2 teams that made like top 5, I think, and no other group had that. So, and we almost beat Talon. So to me, that means we had the best performance out of all the NA teams versus Asian teams. But yeah, they, like, one of the teams we faced only played Red Urshi, and they made top 5 with it. They just played triple scaling, and not a lot of teams at Worlds could punish it besides, like, the top of the top 4 teams. So they had a good run with that strategy, and that's what makes me admit defeat. Fine, it's A tier. Now, Intel, I think Intel's really strong at what it does. It's the best sniper in the game. It has really good early game. I think it struggles into speedsters like Leafeon. Mimikyu is an all-rounder, but it also destroys it. But besides that, there's not many top meta Pokemon that are good into Intel. Crustle counters it. These speedsters counter it, but they're down here. So obviously you can counterpick it, but I think it's really strong at what it does. And it's really good in the meta right now. I think it's probably the best traditional attacker. Like Pikachu, you can run EXP share. I actually think Pikachu EXP share is really good. I forgot to mention that. Intel's the first like traditional attacker that I think is really good. So it's probably the best traditional attacker. And you can see it's an A tier. So the state of attacker as a role is very abysmal if you cannot tell right now. The fact you have to run EXP share on attackers, this is the state of attacker. The first good attacker is here. That's crazy. Like, we're like 15 Pokemon in or something, maybe more. So, but you'll see a lot more of the attackers are here. So it's in an abysmal state, but they're still A tier, so it's not like it's the worst. But out of all the roles, you can see it's definitely the worst. So, Candle, Delphox. Looking back on this, I actually think I'd put Delphox above Candle. I just kind of shoved all the attackers here as the same. Espeon might be above Cram, but I think that's a close call. But Delphox should be above Candle. I just kind of brain farted when I was doing that. Again, I have COVID, so my brain functions are not the best currently. But yeah, so all these attackers, I don't think I need much explanation. I think the biggest explanation I want to give is I think Cram was heavily overrated by NA. If you watch NA, you probably saw it played like the most at regionals, and I think it was nerfed a little after, but still, like, I think it was heavily overrated, and not as good as a lot of the West players thought it was. And I think basically none of the Asian teams played Cram from what I saw. So Metagross is really strong. Again, it's kind of a niche Pokemon. It's like the most tanky all-rounder. It's basically a defender that does a lot of damage and has a lot of movement speed. So the biggest issue with Metagross is it doesn't have dashes. So Pokemon that are very mobile, like Intel, actually moves around a lot. But like even like Pokemon that dash around a lot, Blaziken, it kind of struggles into. But there's certain comps that Metagross just farms. So I think it's and its stats are really good too. So I think it's a really good niche counter pick Pokemon that's just really strong. Even if it's not the best Metagross game, I think it'll still do decently. That's how strong its stats are now. Now Comfey, this is actually like, I've talked to Overlord and Kyrios, and they think like Comfey is fucking like S tier along with these other sports. I hard disagree. I don't think Comfey is that good. It's a niche again. Like, it's good at what it does, where it's like it's impossible to kill Yumi type support, but I think its stats are not the best. And honestly, this is a good spot for Comfey. Like, there's gonna be games Comfey will be really good, and that's fine. But it's not like it's extremely overbearing, extremely strong. I think it's in a good state right now. Now, B tier Crustle. I actually think Crustle is really strong at what it does, which is it hard counters the mages, like Handle, Espeon, Glaceon. It hard counters some of the attackers, and Intel would have to go like Acrobatics to not get countered, A9, etc. But if you look again at the top of the meta Pokemon, they really do not care about Crustle at all. So I think it's just meta dependent. I think Crustle's stats are really strong. There's just better defenders. Like, you don't really want two defenders on your team. So if you had to choose one, it should not be Crustle. In this meta, it should not be Crustle. But it's not like I think it needs a buff or anything. If the meta shifts, it'll be fine. Crustle's in a good state right now. Dodrio, I think the speedsters are actually the second worst role right now. So if attacker is the worst role, speedsters are the second worst. And I actually think attacker, if you consider EXP share attackers as attacker is actually fine. So like, if you consider that as attackers, speedsters are actually the worst role. You'll see like the only speedster I have up here is Leafeon, and the rest of speedsters all the way in B tier. Speedsters are really suffering right now. And I think Dodrio is actually the best speedster out of all of them. Just because it does lose to other speedsters. So a lot of people see that and they're like, oh, Dodrio's not the best speedster. It loses to Zoro. It loses to Absol. It loses to Meowscarada, which is true. But the thing about Dodrio is it applies so much pressure. It's so good into certain Pokemon. Like even Metagross, for example. It's good into Metagross because it runs around a lot. And it scores so many points. And how to win Unite is scoring points. So that of pressure and like how fast it is throughout the game, I think is what makes it the best speedster. Like, if you need to pick one speedster, it should be Dodrio most games, in my opinion. If you're trying to win the early game in Snowball. So, Serena, this might be controversial to like Japanese players because the world champion team actually played it a lot. PY played Serena a lot, and I think Serena's strong at what it does. Which is like, it's a late game scaling Pokemon, but I think its early game is so punishable, and it's not good enough late game, where I am personally a big Serena hater. Obviously the games they picked it, I think it was mostly fine. Like, it's not like it was a bad game to play it, but it's not like you can play it every game. There's going to be comps that are unplayable for it, in my opinion, but it's like a good counter. It's good into certain comps. If you can get away with it, it's very strong. So like, if it doesn't get countered, it's very strong. Now Sylveon, sadly got nerfs right before Worlds, which is really sad for my team because I think I had the best Sylveon player in the world on my team, Black CH. And if Sylveon was really strong at Worlds, I think we would have done much better. But it's also getting changed tomorrow, so I don't think I need to talk about Sylveon much. Hyper Voice is getting a huge change. This is just where I think it is in the World's meta. Zoroark also got a huge nerf. Very sad for Zoro players. Overlord was very upset about it, I think. But yeah, Absol actually got buffed, so I think it's like along with these speedsters. A lot of times Absol was a couple tiers below. So you'll see it's like on par with these other speedsters. They all are good into different themes, which I think is really unique. I think the Does did well with that. Like, they're all good into different Pokemon, so you want to pick them accordingly. But they're all kind of bad right now. So Meow's the same thing. I think the issue with Meow compared to other speedsters is it doesn't have as much pressure throughout the game. It doesn't pressure the game as much as like a Fed, Zoroark, Dodrio, or Absol. But the thing with Meow is I think it's safer and better in team fights. So that's the trade-off. But I think a speedster in general, you don't want to do that. Like, that's not what the speedster role is supposed to fulfill, and that's why it's one of the worst out of like the 5 top speedsters. Now Lucario is just, it's good early game. That's about it though. It kind of really falls off late game in my opinion, but it's still one of the strongest Pokemon early game, and there's a lot of players that are really good at Lucario, so that's why it's up here. Garchomp, I think, is actually really good into certain comps, but it really does get farmed by this current meta. I don't think there's anything wrong with Garchomp per se. I think if the meta shifted, it would be good. Like, it's really good into mages, really safe. I just think other all-rounders kind of farm Garchomp in my opinion. So, especially like with their stats right now, I think Garchomp's kind of really bad in this current meta. But it's not like it needs to be changed or buffed or anything. So, Blastoise. The only reason Blastoise is this high is because one of the top 5 teams found a lot of success on it as an attacker, actually, which is surprising. It's normally played as defender top laner. But Blastoise is just, it's an okay defender, I guess. I'm kind of a Blastoise hater, but you have to give props where props are due. It did look decent when they played it. Scyther, I don't think I need much explanation. It's in C tier. It's good. I'd view C tier as like Pokemon that have like their own niche. Like they're fine in certain games, but they're not the strongest. Like if you have to pick them, you probably could have a better draft, in my opinion. So Wiggly is only up here because it counters Surlege. If Surlege was not this strong, Wiggly would be farther down. If you didn't know, Full Heal completely negates the damage from Surlege ult, but Wiggly ult is the same thing. It's like a cleanse. So if you Wiggly ult the Surlege ult, it does nothing. So it does counter Surlege, but that's about it. That's the only thing it's good for. Sableye, I think, was really underrated. I think, honestly, I haven't seen like a Sableye player fully master Sableye. I'm not gonna lie. So like, a fully mastered Sableye might even be like A tier. I actually think it's really slept on as a Pokemon, but it's very hard to play because the whole team has to adapt. It's not just one player. The whole team has to play around it well, and I think that's really hard. I don't think teams are coordinated enough. Like, all of the teams. I think the World Champion team was coordinated enough. They played Sableye, and it looked good. So that's why it's up here in teacher. Zeraora, I think Nouns Esports and LG this year at Worlds were very big fans of Zera, and I'm a Zera hater. I don't think it's that bad, which is why it's up here, but I'm a Zera hater. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's bad, but that's why it's in C tier. It is the same with the rest of these Pokemon. I think every time Buzzwole's picked, I'm like, the other all-rounders just look way better. You probably would have been better off going like Gyarados or something else. But yeah, D tier, Gardevoir and Tyranitar have fallen off a lot. I just think Gardevoir struggles in this current meta even more so than these other Pokemon, like really badly. Gardevoir is really good into tanks, and you do see a lot of tanks on the top, but it's like if they're playing double defender, which was a meta, which was, I think, what Gardevoir was the strongest into, because it does shred tanky Pokemon, but you'll see like outside of like defenders, which is a necessary role, there's not many carries that are that tanky that it needs to shred through, and it's just gonna die to them. So that's the issue with Gardevoir for me. Tyranitar, just like way too shit early game, gets kited too easily late game. It's just not good in pro play. I think it's fine in solo queue. You'll destroy people in solo queue with it. But Clef, the issue with Clef for me is as like these Pokemon, it's not like they need dashes. Like, they have moves to use that aren't dashes that do a lot of damage. So Clef is going to be shit into melee Pokemon if that's not the case. Like, Gravity's not going to stop them. So it just kind of dies to them, which is why I don't think it's good. But yeah, Aegislash and Machamp are decently far up for how much of a hater. If you watch me a lot, you know I'm kind of a hater of them, Machamp in particular. But I actually think Machamp's better than Venusaur, which might come as a surprise to people. I think Venusaur is really bad right now. Mime and Snorlax are all the way down here too. And F tier, Goodra is actually really strong stats wise still. Not really strong, decently strong, but the issue with Goodra is the same as T-Tar, it just gets kited, and it doesn't even do as much damage as T-Tar, so it's even lower, because it just gets perma-kited. Like, look at this meta. There's so many dashes on all the Pokemon. Like, every single Pokemon has a dash here. If we look through the top Pokemon, the first Pokemon to not have a dash is Pikachu. Oh, I guess we'll see, actually. That's the first Pokemon to not have a dash. So, these Pokemon are going to get kited really easily. I think all these Pokemon just suffer stat-wise. Besides Decidueye, Decidueye's stats are fine. I just think, well, technically no. I mean, if its arrows did a lot of damage, then maybe it would actually be good. Same with Bravely, if like it had a little more health. I think Decidueye just needs to get to its health and defense spot. I get they're trying to get this niche where it's like a glass cannon, but it dies to like breathing. Like, so I think it just really struggles. But yeah, Lynx as the worst Pokemon in the game. Will stand by this. I know there's a lot of Lynx lovers. I think it's so shit now. The nerfs really hurt it. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the world's meta tier list. I'm gonna stop here since my throat is really hurting, and I'll catch you guys in future videos. Hopefully I can make more videos soon.